Christiana Gaudet with more answers to your questions about tarot. Today's question comes from a friend of mine who is a professional tarot reader like me, like many of you. And the question she asks is so universal. It's something we've all dealt with. In fact, it's something that I deal with in my premium webinar, Sharing Wisdom, Reading for Others. But I wanted to take a moment to deal with it in this video because it is that universal and it is that important. What my friend asked me about was what to do when you end up reading for Eeyore. Now, we all remember who Eeyore is, right? Eeyore is the stuffed donkey in Winnie the Pooh. And we all love Eeyore and his tail that falls off, but we know him to be pessimistic, negative, and joyless. What happens when you have to do a reading for someone who is like Eeyore? The reading that my friend described, and she wrote to me in some frustration after the reading, was that it was like the worst/hardest reading ever. And she ended up after an hour just offering to refund the money. It was a professional reading, and call it quits because she didn't want to waste her time or her client's time. What happens is many times people who have that Eeyore thing going on, they are very negative, very pessimistic. Many times they don't realize this about themselves. So if you tell them that, this will happen if they are more positive, they'll say, well, I am positive. So a lot of times Eeyore does not have a huge amount of self-reflection. And so in a reading with Eeyore, what will happen often is the reading will be very clear that the client needs to be proactive, that there are things the client needs to do or change to create the outcome they desire or a good outcome. Now, they may come for a reading just to see what you're going to say. They may come because they want to know if things are ever going to get better. But they won't acknowledge the effectiveness or the accuracy of what you're saying, not because they're skeptical, not because they're negative to you or to tarot reading, but because through their vision, through their framework, through their perspective, there's nothing they can do to change things. Their attitude is completely appropriate, and their attitude is not creating their problems. Now, when you look at the cards, you're going to see something different. You're going to see that if they change their attitude, things would change, and that their attitude is, in fact, pessimistic. So you need to recognize that they see things very differently than you do. It is to your credit that your frustration, that this very terrible kind of reading is frustrating and terrible because the person won't let you help them. That your prime directive as a tarot reader is to help someone, and you're waiting for the aha moment, you're waiting for the breakthrough, you're waiting for them to take a new perspective, and maybe they're not gonna, and so then you don't feel like you're a successful tarot reader. Good for you. As long as it bothers you when you're not able to help or to heal someone, you are spiritually on your right path as a tarot reader. But you can't let it bother you too much. With a person like this who is clearly not going to have a great moment or a great revelation, with this kind of person, you as the reader must change your expectation. You must do what you're paid to do, which is to read the cards. Go back to your very basic position, card, interpretation, reading. Do the reading. There's no reason to give them their money back. You're going to read the cards for them. Read the cards for them. You need to change your expectation of what's going to happen for them in this tarot reading. And do it sooner rather than later into the reading. Because these are the readings that can drag on forever. Now, here's another tactic. When they give you the indication of how they see things and what they're willing to do and not willing to do and what changes they won't make, when they give that to you, completely agree with them. Say, okay. And then just pull some cards. Say, okay, if that's how you want to do things, and don't say that in a snarky way. You know, it's you have to be really careful with your language, with your tone, with your language too, but with your tone. You know, okay, that's a reasonable way to do things. Here's what happens if you do things that way. And pull out some cards and say, okay, do this. And for many of these people, doing this is really just doing what they've been doing all along. Here's what you can expect. You can say, now here are some different things you can do and some other outcomes you might have. You can do this. And maybe you've already come to what they really should do, what would be in their best interest. So give them that scenario and pull some cards of what would happen if they did that. Maybe come up with some other scenarios and pull cards. But get your emotions out of it, get your expectations out of it. Take control of the reading. Don't make them bad or wrong for the way they feel. And the thing is, clearly they don't want to be responsible for their outcome. So don't make them responsible for their outcome. Show them the options. Show them what's likely to happen with each option. Leave the ball in their court. I think a lot of times these people are coming to us because they really are looking for a fortune teller. They do not feel responsible for their circumstances. That's why they're negative. They feel like bad things are randomly happening to them, not realizing the control that they have. And so now they're wondering if random good things will happen to them. Sometimes random good things do happen. And it's perfectly okay to check for that, to look at the cards and say, okay, what random good thing is going to happen for this person that I can predict? That's a positive way to end a reading of this nature, because your motivation is to help someone, and this kind of reading frustrates and disappoints you because you feel like you're not helping. But you know, this is going to sound cliche, but it's a truth. We plant seeds. Maybe what you say to this person is not going to make a change. Maybe they're going to walk away shaking their heads, not really getting what you said. But maybe next year someone else is going to say something similar to them. And maybe the year after that, someone else will say a similar thing. And maybe at some point, a critical mass will be reached and they will get it and they will make a change. And you will have been part of that critical mass. Now, what creates an Eeyore? I think a lot of times it's clinical depression. I think it's people who are not aware they're depressed, or who won't acknowledge depression as a real issue, or who won't, for one reason or another, do some kind of treatment for depression. I think sometimes Eeyores are made, not born. It has to do with the mindset of the parents. I think it's interesting that when you talk to someone who has an Eeyore mentality, their story is not necessarily any more tragic than the story of someone who doesn't. It's all in perspective. And I think as tarot readers, this is what makes it difficult for us, because when we are doing our best work, what we're helping people do is reframe their perspective. And Eeyores don't like to have their perspective reframed. So another thing we have to acknowledge is on some level, Eeyores are happy being Eeyores. On some level, they choose this. And that's an interesting thing to do, too, in a very quiet way, to take a moment during the reading and ask the universe silently this question: how does being like this serve this person? Why does this person choose to be an Eeyore? And pull some cards for your own insight. Don't tell the client this is the question you're asking. But once you understand why the client is doing this, it might make you more patient. It might help you get some distance and some perspective on the situation yourself. And maybe it will give you some insight into what you could do or say to help create a change for the person. Thanks so much for a great question. And if you have a question about tarot, please send me an email.